Welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we provide workshop and exercises to learn about AWS services. These workshop and exercises are published to our website aws-dojo.com. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone. I have been off from my work for almost 2 to 3 weeks. That's why there was no video, but I am back to work, and yeah, I promise to keep coming up with new videos and workshop in this year as well. So today I'm going to talk about a very simple but very powerful feature inside AWS Lake Formation, and that is called Blueprint. Let's try to understand the purpose of Blueprint using a simple example. So suppose that you are trying to build data lake in using AWS Lake Formation, where you want to keep S3 as some of the as your data location. And then in this data lake, you want to bring data from your relational databases. It could be running on RDS, it could be running on some other JDBC endpoint, on premises, anywhere. And you want to bring your data into this data lake, and then also you want to build a pipeline which can keep pumping data to the data lake. So what all the steps you will perform to get this job done? I mean, if I talk at very high level, first you will write a crawler which can simply go and catalog your relational database tables. So you will run a crawler which will simply go and catalog your relational database tables. Now that your source database tables are cataloged, then you write a glue job, one or more depending on how many tables you want to work with. And then this glue job will simply read data from your tables and will dump it to the S3 bucket over here as per the configuration provided. Now that your data is at the destination, so first two were to catalog your source location. Then we wrote a job which can read data from the source location and dump to the destination. And then you crawl your destination, your target location in your data lake, so that you can catalog your data into S3 location as well. And why we need to catalog, guys? I have repeated it many times. You want to catalog because you want your data to be discoverable and queryable. Okay. So you again write a crawler for the S3 bucket so that you can catalog the data which has been dumped into the S3 bucket. And finally, you want to catalog it. Yeah. So these are typical steps. I mean, there are other steps involved like setting up the connection and configuring the database inside your lake formation. Even those steps are involved, but at high level, these are the steps you have to perform. Now, these are the individual components you have to create. Now, in order to make it run as a pipeline in an orchestrated fashion, in an automated fashion, then you do something else. Then you create glue triggers and workflows to orchestrate a pipeline, to create a pipeline which simply performs each of these individual tasks in a certain sequence, in certain orchestrated fashion, so that your pipeline keeps running in automated fashion. So this pipeline will keep bringing data from your relational database systems to your data lake, make them catalogable, make them cataloged so that they are discoverable and queryable by other processes or the users. So this is how you configure a pipeline to the data lake. Now, if you use Glue, so this is one way of doing it, of course. You are working at the lowest level to get the job done. But what you can do else is that you can simply configure a blueprint. So you must have seen one of the video I created about Glue Workflow, where I made you learn how you can configure Glue, your crawlers and workflows to crawlers and jobs into a workflow to create a pipeline which can orchestrate the things. Well, that was one way of doing it. Other way could be, and a much simpler way, is that you can simply configure a lake formation blueprint. So when you configure a lake formation blueprint, actually it provides a template. In a template, once you configure it, all this orchestration, all this creation of the jobs and the crawlers, and creating a workflow around that, using triggers to set up sequence of execution. All those things are configured by Blueprint itself. All you need to provide is like fill in the templates. This is my requirement. This is how it's going to work. This is my source. This is my destination. And this is the way I want my data format to be. This is my frequency of run, and it will take care of the rest of the individual component level configuration. And when I say it takes care of individual component level configuration, it will create behind the scene trigger, workflow, crawlers, your jobs, everything it will do itself. Yeah. So sounds simpler, right? It is simpler because that's the job of the Blueprint, to make this whole pipeline configuration simpler. So we are going to learn how to use such a Blueprint configuration. So at very high level, it makes the whole ETL job simple and more automated. So you don't need to create those individual crawlers and jobs and triggers and workflows and make them work together. Okay, so that part goes away, that pain goes away. And in order to do so, it provides you a template, gives you a template, and based on that template, you can only create a workflow. So this template is also the strength of the Blueprint, but this is also a weakness, because if you have your requirement which fits into this template, then yeah, you can simply go and use the Blueprint. So if you have a requirement and say, hey, Blueprint template simply meets the requirement, then you can use the Blueprint. But if your requirements are beyond Blueprint out-of-box template configuration, then you cannot use Blueprint, because Blueprint is not customizable. It's not that you can go and change the template. Not at least not at this point of time. Hopefully in future, never know with AWS. So keep in mind that since it is a template-based configuration, that means your requirements must match to the template configuration. If it goes even a small thing beyond what template can do, then in that case you have to go down to the previous path where you are simply creating everything by yourself and configuring into a workflow. So few things you should know, because then you need to know that what template can do, what it cannot do. So let's try to understand. There are four types of templates or Blueprint types available. So first of all, there's a one Blueprint type or template which can do the snapshot of database. So you can simply dump every data in the database. Of course, you can put filters on the tables and those kind of things, but yeah, but it simply dumps every record from the tables you configure here. There is another template which can do incremental data dump. So it's very useful again, but yeah, again, keep in mind that in this case, whether you're taking a snapshot or incremental, actually, yeah, that's two model you can use. Yeah, and it's very useful because you might want to configure. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you want one-time data dump and then you are done with it, and sometimes you want, in fact, most of the time you want incremental data dump into your data lake. There is a template which can work with Cloud Trail logs. There is a template which can work with both application load balancer logs and classical load balancer logs. So these two logs. So this template or Blueprint type can work with only these in fact, four types of data sources. Your ALB logs, your CLB logs, your Cloud Trail logs, and of course your databases. And in case of databases, it can do both snapshot and incremental. Okay, that's only four types of templates available. Your target data format can only be Parquet or CSV, nothing beyond it. So you have requirement for JSON or Avro or something else, then I'm sorry, yeah, you cannot use template. Um, Similarly, and then frequency, you can schedule your blueprint to run on demand or on schedule. So, which is, I think, fair enough. This kind of meets our most of the requirements. Okay. So, when you configure, again, coming back to the point again, because people generally get confused that, hey, if I have a blueprint, then why I should use workflow configuration myself? The answer is that with these 5 different types of blueprint types, you can configure this template to build the pipeline. It will do all the heavy lifting for you, but it cannot go beyond the default configuration it provides. And if you see that your requirement does not meet with this default configuration, then you have no other choice but to create all these individual crawlers and jobs and workflow yourself and make use of it. So that's the differentiation. If my requirement can meet with Blueprint, I will happily use it because it simplifies my job. But if not, then go back to the basics and create everything from the scratch. Yeah, have that fun. So having done that, what are we building today? So what I'm building today is pretty straightforward thing. We will have a relational database configured with certain tables and data into it, and then we'll configure a blueprint with the snapshot configuration to dump those tables into an S3 bucket. And this S3 bucket has been configured as a data location inside the lake formation. Yeah. So as simple as that. So in order to do this scenario, we have created a workshop, and this workshop has been published to our website, aws-dojo.com. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to walk you through the steps of the workshop, and yeah, I mean, I'll explain what different steps involve and what they do, and post that you are free to run this workshop by your own and learn how AWS Lake Formation Blueprint can be used to create ETL pipelines in a simple and automated way. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let's jump to the workshop. So this is the website, aws-dojo.com, and here we have published our workshop. I have talked about the scenario already, so let's start the workshop. And when you click on starting the workshop, it shows you the steps you need to perform to complete the workshop. So these are the 7-8 steps you have to perform to get the job done. So let's go step by step. So first step is you need to have an AWS account in order to perform this workshop. And if you don't have an AWS account, then click on this link to create the account. Next one is that we need to create a role. So again, this the blueprint is going to create all these crawlers and workflows and jobs behind the scene, but these individual items need some kind of IAM role for the authorization purpose, and that is the role we are going to create at this point of time. So what we do, we go to the IAM management console, we say we want to create a role, and we select Glue as a service. And then I'm giving you some lump sum big permission over here. But if you are in a production environment, you might want to perform more stricter permission over here. So I'm giving this administrative access. I'm giving this a nice name called Dojo Glue role and simply create the role. So the role has been created. Now what we do is that since for this workshop we have to create a relational database instance, RDS instance, using Amazon RDS service. So for that we are creating a security group. And then we'll also create an S3 bucket, which will work as a data lake location and also the destination for the pipeline built inside your blueprint. So we go to the VPC environment console, we create a security group, and then I name this Dojo MySQL security group, and then I'm simply configuring it into default VPC here, because in the default VPC we'll also launch the relational database instance as a source database instance. And then I'm simply saying that, hey, it can take traffic from anywhere. Okay, and after that, once this security group is created, one of the requirements of a security group when you try to configure, say, an RDS instance or a Redshift instance as as a source inside Glue, you need to have a self-referencing access on all TCP for security group. So that's what we are configuring here. You can see here that this security group was created, and for this security group, we are saying that accept all TCP communication. So this security group is then used by Glue connection to make the connection, and one of the requirement of Glue connection is that the security group which it will use should have all TCP connection, yeah, like that. So we configure that part. Then we simply go to S3 management console and we create this bucket over here, which is going to work as a destination bucket for our ETL job. So we create a security group and S3 bucket. Now we simply launch the RDS instance because we need to set up the source. We need to set up the source database system here. Okay, in order to finish this workshop. So for that, we go to the RDS management console. Say we want to create a standard Amazon Aurora, MySQL compatible. Let's go serverless. In this case, then we give a nice database identifier name here, instance identifier. Then we give username, some password, and then we move on. And then we give minimum capacity over here. The VPC is the default VPC, and keep in mind your security group is also in the default VPC. So we are trying to launch the whole RDS part into default VPC. So we select the default VPC for the VPC. Then we are using the default subnet group, which basically selects all the subnets inside the default VPC. And then it comes to security group, we say, hey, I have one existing security group, and the previous step we created is Dojo MySQL security group. We selected that one. And then we also select this data API option here. Why I'm doing this? Because I'm going to use query editor inside RDS to create data inside my relational database. And in order to do so, I need to select this data API option here. So we simply launch the cluster and wait till the status is available. Once the status is available, we make note of this endpoint because you need it later when you try to configure your rest like your connections and those kind of things. So now what we do is that we go to the query editor because my relational database instance my RDS instance is up and running, but it does not have any data. Okay, so we are going to create some data, and in order to do so, we click on this query editor, and then this query editor will say, hey, which instance you want to connect, and we say Dojo database instance. I want to add a new database credentials. You provide the same credentials you have used to create the database instance, and you connect to the database. Once you connect to database, you simply run this script. Okay, and this script is pretty straightforward, guys. And first, we create this Dojo database, and then in Dojo database, we create this customers table, which has got 2 columns over here. Then we insert some data for the customers table. Then we create employee table, and then we insert data for the employee table, and simple. So we are simply creating 2 tables here as an example, but of course you can, if you have a bigger script, you can use that here as well. So we simply, our database table records, everything is ready. Now we are going to create one more intermediate step before we move on to really configuration inside Glue, and that is create private link. Now Glue will talk to S3, and it does not, in order to talk to S3, actually there are 2 choices available. One is we use a NAT gateway, so that the traffic can go to S3 over internet. And second is you can create a private link so that traffic can go to S3 using AWS Backbone. I like the other one. So we are going to create a private link here, which will be used by Glue to talk to the S3 bucket without going over internet. And this endpoint, S3 endpoint will create inside default VPC. Okay, it's again one of the requirements. You need to provide a connection from Glue to the S3, and two choices: either use NAT gateway or use private link. I always prefer private link. So I go to the so for that we go to the VPC management console again. We go to the endpoint, say I want to create a new endpoint, and then simply click on create endpoint, and then here you say I want my service category is AWS service, filter down to S3, and then from where I want to provide connection, I want to provide connection from my default VPC, which route table to associate, and I use the default route table because that has all three subnet of the default VPC associated with, and then I simply provide full access. Again, you have a choice to restrict this access to something more restrictive, but I simply keep it simple and say, hey, let's give full access. And then we simply create the endpoint. And now this endpoint can be used by Glue. So having done this, now we can go to the Glue and Lake formation and start doing the configuration over there, because now my relational database, my source database system is ready, my destination S3 bucket is ready, and my communication to the S3 is also ready. And now I can start working inside Lake formation and do some configuration over there. So for that, you go to configure Lake formation. We'll do some basic things first. So first, you will add administrator to the lake formation. If you are doing it first time, then of course you have to add your one of your logged in user, or either your logged in user or some other user as administrator to the lake formation. And once you have done that, we're simply saying that we want to create a new database into the lake formation, and we name the database as a Dojo database. And once we have done that, we want to grant this. So remember this Dojo Glue role. They are going to this role is going to get used by your Glue blueprint and entities like crawlers and those kind of things to perform the pipeline operation. So we need to provide this role access to your database. So what we did that we selected database, say we want to grant access to this role, and then we simply say Dojo Glue role, I'm giving it a super access so that it can do anything inside my database. So it's simply going to create tables and nothing more than that. And so once you have done that, this role has now got access to the database you just created into Lake formation. Now we configure the connection, and connection provides a way to connect to your source database, okay, which in this case is a Amazon Aurora serverless instance. So we go to the Glue, click on the connections, add connection, and in this case we are saying Dojo connection. Let's give this connection a nice name, and connection type is JDBC. And then we move next, and then it will say, okay, fair enough. So if it is JDBC, can you tell me your JDBC URL? And JDBC URL has this kind of format which says JDBC protocol, host, port, database name. And if you see here, I'm saying JDBC protocol is MySQL. This is my host name, which I made note of when I created my relational database server. My port is 3306, and those are database name. Then I provided login and password. I selected my default VPC, one of the subnets, and then I selected the same security group which we use to which we assign to the relational database service, RDS. And then we simply finish this connection. Then when you finish the connection, you need to test the connection to make sure your connection is successful, because it is, you want to ensure that, because this connection will be used by the crawlers and glue jobs to get the job done. And if this connection is not successful, those things will fail. So you want to test your connection. In order to do so, you select your connection, you click on the test connection. It will say which role should I assume to make this do this job, and you simply use this Dojo Glue role which you created earlier. Yeah, we are going to use this role here, left, right, center, because this is the only role we have right now. And then we simply test the connection and make it and wait till it says successful. Now my connection is successful. Now comes the key part where you configure the blueprint. So next step is to configure and run the blueprint. So you go to the lake formation. In the lake formation, you can see a blueprint menu in the left. You click on the blueprint and say use blueprint. And then it will give you what type of blueprint. Remember, I showed you in the presentation, there are 5 different types of blueprint you can select. But in this case, we are using this database snapshot blueprint because we simply want to dump the data from the 2 tables we just created in the earlier steps. So I select that option, that blueprint option, and then depending on what option you select here, the whole configuration for the template changes. So since I selected database snapshot, it gives me one choice. So it asks me a few more things, like for instance, which database connection to use, and I use data Dojo connection, and this connection to be used to connect to database. Then what is the source data path? In this case, I'm saying that in my Dojo database, take all the tables inside that. So both tables we created, we're simply dumping the table. So the format is your database schema and the table name. Yeah, it's a case sensitive. And if you provide this percentage value, that means it's saying that yeah, it represents a wildcard for your schema table. Okay, and then it says, okay, fair enough. So good. So where do you want to import this data? Your target location. So my target database is DojoDB. My target storage location is my S3 bucket we just created, and my data format is Parquet. So again, you have 2 choices here, Parquet or CSV. We selected the Parquet choice over here. And remember, again, we are simply configuring a template here. And then you select the frequency of the run. Since this blueprint, and I'm running it on demand, but generally you want to schedule it because you want pipeline to run at certain frequency. Having done that, then you create, since it creates kind of, it creates blueprint, since it has a workflow behind, so it will also ask what is the name of the workflow you're going to provide. So you provide the name of the workflow, you select which role it should be using, and you can also provide prefix for your table, which in this case I kept it simple, dojo underscore. And then we simply create this blueprint. So blueprint will be created. And again, guys, compared to creating the crawlers and workflows and jobs, you simply configured a template. Okay, and all this template is saying is that take data from my relational database, put into my S3 bucket, and do all other necessary things in terms of cataloging and crawling and job and automation, everything. So once your blueprint is configured, you simply go and say, I want to start this blueprint. You start this blueprint and it will start working. It takes some time. I mean, I have seen sometime can take like 20, 30 minutes to finish the job, even more, in fact, sometimes 45 minutes, depending on how many tables you have. So you start running this workflow, and first time it takes more time because first time it has to create everything happening behind it. Will create the job, will create the crawler, everything it will do, create behind the scenes. So first time it takes a longer time, but next time onwards it's faster. Okay, so have little patience. So you run it and wait till it to finish and wait till it says, hey, it has completed. Once it has completed, actually the whole ETL workflow has been created. So if you go here, in fact, to, like for instance, you go to the tables, you can see that your S3 data has been, your RDS tables have been cataloged. Like you can, these two are RDS tables cataloged. These two are your S3 data which has been cataloged, and data has already been moved to the S3 bucket. Okay, and then it also creates some temporary catalog as well. Okay, and then if you go to the S3 bucket, in fact, you can see that your whole data has been created into your S3 bucket. And I'm not showing it here, but if you, for instance, go to the Glue console and try to see the jobs, list the jobs, workflow, triggers, crawlers, you can see that it would have created the crawler behind the scene, jobs behind the scene, workflows behind the scene, triggers behind the scene, and yeah, you can check. And all those things, you have not to build it. You simply configure your blueprint, and blueprint took care of configuring the jobs, crawlers, triggers, workflows, making them orchestrate with each other and run in automated fashion. Okay, so yeah, that's how the blueprint works. And that's it, guys. And after that, you go to the next step and you clean up the resources so that you don't incur any cost post this workshop. So that was all how your blueprint can be configured and can be used to create an ETL pipeline. Hope you like this video. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and please subscribe to my channel. There are many other similar exercises and workshops available to our website aws-dojo.com, and I do encourage to explore those exercises and workshops, and yeah, and do step-by-step exercises to learn about AWS services. If you have any feedback or comment or request for new content, you can either provide that into the YouTube channel comment section, or you can also click on the contact us tab over here and can provide feedback there as well. We always listen to your feedback to try to provide good content back to you. Yeah. So that is all for today, guys. I promise to come back with a new video in the coming couple of days. Meanwhile, stay safe and have a nice day. Bye bye.